Today's interview is with Joe Meares. Joe works in the financial industry, but through mentoring realized that real estate was where he wanted to be. So he talks about how the power of mentoring has really been an important aspect in his life. He's also a pretty good boxer. He talks about that, as well as visualization is another huge skill that he has. And he talks about why he thinks that's so important. So really fun interview. Joe's a great guy and a really fun guy to have on the show. So stick around for all of that great information. Hello and welcome to Wrestling with Real Estate, where we look to chokeslam all your real estate problems. I'm your host, former WWE wrestler and now Cirque du Soleil performer, and of course, multifamily real estate investor Barri Griffiths. Now today we're joined by Joe Meares. Did I say that right? Joe Meares?
You got it. Rhymes with beers.
Okay. Hey Joe, how you doing, man?
I'm doing great, man. Thank you for having me on.
Absolutely, man. I'm excited to have you. It's going to be a great conversation, no doubt. But before we dive into the conversation, do you want to kind of introduce yourself, let people know more about you and what you've been up to?
Yeah, sure. So my name is Joe Meares. Been investing in real estate for about a little over 2 years now. I work in finance at a bank. That's my 9 to 5. And that's one of the big reasons I got into real estate, to escape the 9 to 5, get financial freedom. But I guess I just like take it back a little bit to kind of tell you a little bit more about myself and how I think about real estate and kind of life in general. As I always try to, what I think one of my talents is being able to visualize a goal and then go after it. And then sometimes I may not even know how I'm going to get there in the meantime, but kind of the way I think about it is, I don't know if you've seen X-Men, but when Magneto's walking out across that open space and the floor kind of just comes out in front of him. Sometimes I think of the path or the journey that I'm taking. That's how the ideas just come to me as I'm going along. And you kind of have to have that belief in yourself that you're going to get there. So when I was growing up, I was always a super chubby guy, to the point where I remember this one time I went to the doctor and he literally grabbed onto my rolls and he was like, "You like mom's home cooking, don't you?" And I was like, yeah, I guess, I don't know. But I was at that point I was like, oh my God, I need to take, and I was 12 at the time, but I was like, I'm tired of this shit. I'm going to figure this out. And I remember I went to Modell's and I bought 2 5-pound dumbbells and I started working out. And then fast forward, right now I'm a certified personal trainer. I did 2 Ironman in 2019. I've run 5 marathons. And so I figured out a way to do that. And then I remember when I went to college, I had done sports in high school, but I wanted to do something new in college because I wasn't really at a D1 level. And there was a really big boxing tournament. And I was always kind of really nice guy growing up. I was an altar server. I don't know if you had those growing up, but I was an altar server. And so I said I was going to do boxing. And a lot of my friends and family were like, "Are you sure you're going to do boxing? You're probably going to get the shit kicked out of you." And I was like, okay. I'll show you guys. And so I started watching old fights. I love Mike Tyson and Floyd Patterson and those guys. And I would literally just visualize myself fighting like them. And I ended up winning a couple tournaments in college. So I think just, in general, and this transfers to real estate as well. Because when I started investing in real estate, I started investing out of state. And I think a lot of people were just like, "What are you thinking, buying a house in the middle of nowhere?" And I invested in Indiana and Pennsylvania. And it's this small town in Indiana, 700 miles away from where I live in Manhattan. And people were kind of "You sound crazy. Are you sure you want to do this?" And I just knew inside that I could get it done. So I think that's an important part of my background, is just having a really strong ability to visualize stuff and then going after it and then really listening to that inner voice regardless of what other people are saying. And it's good to have other like-minded people like yourself and some of my real estate mentors like KR and my uncle, who you interviewed, my Uncle Dan Barrera, who kind of give you support along the way, even if the majority of people think you're nuts. So I don't know, just kind of my background there.
Yeah, I forgot that Dan Barrera is your uncle. What a great uncle! Yeah. Inspiring figure to have in real estate, because he's awesome. Yeah. Not only is he awesome at what he does in terms of real estate investing, but what a great guy as well. Just great human being as well. So that's awesome. Yeah. So you went to college for boxing? No, they have scholarships for boxing. I've never heard of that.
Yeah, I didn't go for boxing.
Okay.
I went to Notre Dame. It's a school in Indiana, and we have, I think it's the largest amateur boxing tournament in the world, actually. So it's 200 guys participate. Your freshman year is your novice season, and because most of the guys obviously coming out of high school don't have any experience. So it's literally, boxing is a very individual sport, but we had team practices of like 100 novice guys, and literally you're learning, like, I still remember it was like feet, knees, thighs, elbows, hands, like remembering like where your body should be and stuff. So I learned freshman year, got my ass handed to me in a bunch of fights freshman year, and then sophomore year I was like, all right, I'm really gonna train hard and figure this out. And that was the year I won the tournament. I had a couple knockouts, but yeah, it wasn't a scholarship thing. It's just like a tournament where I think there's like 4 fights per weight class. So it's actually pretty big, like 16 guys in each weight class, and 4 fights. And then the last fights are in the basketball arena. So it was fun. Like it was a pretty good deal.
Yeah, that's really interesting. I'm going to ask you, because you started in freshman year boxing then, right? Is that the first time you just started? You never boxed or anything before that?
Never had. I mean, I had like play around gloves when I was little, but never really hit a bag or any of that stuff. And I think that comes down to the visualization part, right? Because I can kind of see myself like mimicking the fighters. And I remember freshman year, a lot of it was literally standing in the mirror and just like doing the fights. And I'm sure with wrestling, you have to do a lot of that stuff with getting your moves correct and everything.
Yeah.
In Cirque du Soleil.
Yeah.
Do a lot of practice, a lot of muscle memory.
Yeah, it is right. And it's just, but the reason I was asking that is because that's so interesting that you started in freshman year and you got pretty good pretty quick, I'm guessing, if you won some tournaments, right? It wasn't like 15 years later you were winning tournaments, right? Because boxing, for a lot of people, boxing is a lifelong thing, like learning lesson, right? The reason I'm asking is I think that's what you learn, and the ability to do that quickly. I was wondering how you did it, because that could be transferable to real estate, right? There's people listening to this who haven't invested a day in real estate, and they might be thinking, oh God, this is going to be a 10, 15 year journey, but it doesn't need to be like that, right? And I was just wondering if there are some skills that you learned then that are transferable to real estate investing that people could.
Yeah, absolutely. So one of I like to say that I have mentors that I've never met before. And one of those guys is Bob Proctor, who you may have heard of. He's kind of like one of the Tony Robbins guys. But he has this phrase where he says, you can take quantum leaps through the transference of information and experience. And I think the way that happens is you find someone who's like a coach or a mentor who can really synthesize things so that you can skip a bunch of the mistakes right off the bat. And in boxing, I had a great mentor and coach who was actually a priest out of Notre Dame, who kind of took me under his wing. And he was like in his 60s or 70s, but he would get in there and throw mitts with us.
Really?
And then also, the boxing coaches were just super cool guys and taught us everything that they had learned over 4 years. So I think one really important way to transfer that to real estate is you have to be coachable, right? Because if you try to figure it out all by yourself, it's going to take you a super long time. And you want to find someone who knows exactly what they're doing and try to add value to them. So like with one of my mentors, KR, like I created like an investor slide pitch book for him because he was going out to investors at that time. And he just didn't have time to make a pitch book. And I had previously had experience in investment banking where all I did was create pitch books all the time. So I helped him there. You don't want to like go up to someone and just say like, can you be my mentor? You want to, try to add some value and ask them very specific questions about that you might have in real estate. But yeah, I think the transferable skill from boxing to real estate would definitely be try to be coachable. And then when you do find that person that's your coach, just do what they say. Like try not to be stubborn. It might sound crazy at first, but if they're successful and they know what they're doing, you kind of just want to be like, all right, I'm going to do exactly what this person says. They're gonna want to coach you more if you do what they say. Right,
exactly. Right. If you find someone who's an ideal mentor for you and you're pushing back on everything they're saying, they're gonna be like, well, why am I giving this person my advice? Right? He's not listening to any of this. Yeah.
And I have the same thing when I do personal training. Like the best clients are the ones that just do what you say all the time, and that's helped me be a better student also, because when you see that and you know how it makes you feel, you want to make your coaches feel the same way. So
yeah, that's cool. So when did real estate come in? You mentioned KR there. I've into it.
Yeah. So I think like about 2 or 3 years ago, I remember it was like March 2018. I had a couple things happen where I just turned 30, and I don't know if you've ever felt this, but sometimes when you get the round numbers, you kind of get reflective on life and everything. And I had been doing well for myself, but I guess I kind of thought like maybe I would have more to show for my work at that point in my life. So I kind of did the math on, the money I was making working at the bank and, what the future prospects of that job were. And, I work in finance, and when I started college, the prospects of working in finance was right before the financial crisis. So the prospects were great. And then halfway through college, that all changed. And so right now it's more like, it was more, became clear to me, if I want to have financial independence and some sort of financial freedom at a reasonably early age, I'm going to have to start like a serious side hustle. And so I started racking my brain, and a couple other like-minded individuals where I worked had similar ideas, and I'd heard that this guy, KR, was doing investing in real estate in Philadelphia. And he worked in our Boston office, and I was working in the Manhattan office. But I had actually interviewed him like 3 or 4 years prior. So I kind of knew who he was. But he was nice enough to have a phone call with us and explain a little bit of what he did. And I remember going into it, I was a little skeptical because I had talked to some people about real estate before this. And I remember one guy was doing this like really complex triple net stuff. And it seemed too hard for me to figure out on my own and kind of do it while I had a full-time job. But when I got on this phone call with KR, and he started explaining his strategy, I realized, wow, this is pretty straightforward stuff. All it takes is like, you have to have some grit, and you got to have a little bit of money saved up. And luckily I had been taught from a young age to save like a good portion of all my paychecks. So it kind of built up a nice little nest egg for myself. And every moment after that call, I was just texting him, like asking him more and more questions. And he kind of became my mentor, like I alluded to earlier. And so that conversation was in August of 2018. And then I bought my first single family out in Indiana in October of 2018, a little two bedroom, 1 bathroom. And I've kind of just grown from there.
I respect that a lot. Like from someone like yourself, right? Obviously a smart guy, right? And what you do for a living, right? You're underplaying what you do. You explained to me earlier what you do, right? It's not an easy job, right? You're obviously a very intelligent guy, very hardworking guy, right? Boxer, can kick most people's ass. Personal trainer, you know what I mean? But to reach out and to be vulnerable and to say, hey, I have no idea what I'm doing. I just want to listen to you. Do you know what I mean? I think that's not easy for a lot of people to do. So I respect the heck out of that fact that you were willing to do that.
I agree, yeah. And I think I didn't realize what I was doing at the time, but ever since, I think there's kind of a lot of parallels between self-development and real estate. And I am very into self-development and like behavioral psychology and those sorts of things. And I think you have to have an open mind and a beginner's mind all the time, especially as an entrepreneur, because you're going to get knocked around and bounced around constantly. And if you're in this like perfectionist mindset, you're going to get crushed mentally, because you're always going to be, you're always making mistakes and kind of like breaking new ground as an entrepreneur. So being able to ask for help and just be humble and not have like a big ego. It's like everyone had to learn at some point. So it's okay to make mistakes, and being like gentle with yourself is important. So I totally agree with you there.
Yeah. And the self-development is like, since I had some self-development knowledge beforehand from being in wrestling and working out and stuff like that, but real estate really, like you said, lends itself to that, right? Because they go hand in hand, I feel like, right? Because unless you become that person, because I heard someone say, right, it's not about figuring out your goal and figuring out that number, right? It is, but you've also got to figure out who you need to be as a person to get to that number, right? So if it's like if you want to make $100,000 a year, who is that person who makes $100,000 a year? It's probably not who you are right now. Otherwise, you'd be making that, right? So you've got to become that person. So that involves in self-development, and I love that. Self-development is a huge thing for me as well. It's just really fascinating what the mind and what you can do to yourself and improve yourself and just get, it's just crazy.
We could do a whole other interview. I'm so into that stuff, but I totally agree. It really is. And that's like another thing about entrepreneurship is it's not like what you get out of it, it's what you become as you're going towards the goal. Like that's the coolest part, I think. And once you realize that, like it's really counterintuitive, but it's almost like the less you make it about the money, the more money you start making. Because you're just like leading with service. And the thing you said about, you really do have, I literally do this every night. Like I do a visualization exercise where I will literally think about like, what am I doing? Like, what would I be doing if I was making like the amount that I'm trying to make it my goal? Like, what are the day-to-day things I'd be doing? And once you do that, you actually just find yourself like naturally doing those things. It's crazy. But yeah,
it seems like visualization has played a part in your life, like throughout, right? You mentioned it right at the start that you have this ability to visualize stuff. Did that come from you, or is it just an innate trait that you've had, you think, growing up?
Well, the really weird part about it is that when I was talking about those stories from my past when I was doing it, I didn't realize I was doing it. Like, it was kind of just unconsciously doing it for certain things. Like, I would see myself either, getting into a certain college or winning the boxing championship. And it wasn't like I was actively, thinking about, okay, I'm going to visualize this now. I was just doing it. But then when I started getting into self-development, I kind of like retroactively figured out that that was something that I was doing that was really good. And then it became easier to like consciously focus it on certain specific things that I wanted to do. So now, like, I actively work on doing it on a day-to-day basis. And I think that people that aren't into self-dev or that kind of stuff can be like, okay, like you visualize yourself doing this stuff, okay, whatever. But it's something that you have to try before you kind of, I think if you haven't done it before, once you start doing it, it becomes very obvious very quickly how powerful it is. And look, anything that I live in Manhattan, you'll see these buildings that are literally 100 stories tall, and those all started as an idea in someone's head.
Yeah.
So the ability of like the mind to manifest stuff into reality is like super powerful. So yeah, I think it's really important.
That's cool. Thanks for sharing, man. So your first property, you hear about real estate, or I'm sure you'd heard about real estate before, but you really kind of had that aha moment in August of 2018, and then in October, which is pretty quick turnaround, really, right? You bought your first property.
Yeah.
How were you able to go from that? Was it just mentor? Was it just you just saying, I'm going to do this, going ahead from it? Because a lot of people have that trouble getting to that first property.
Yeah, I think that's a great question. And I think it is really, I think that like the two big sticking points that I've seen, especially with people that we coach, are picking a market and like pulling the trigger on the first property. So the market, I just kind of, I always tell people, like, try to find some place that obviously the numbers have to make sense, but also that maybe you have some sort of like small tactical advantage. So like this place that I invest in, one of my best friends, he's from there and now he currently lives there. So I kind of have like somewhere to stay when I go, and he has a little bit more of a knowledge of what's going on in the town. But the way that I think I did it so quickly was, like I said, the coaching, they are super important. Having a great mentor and coach to kind of like guide me away from the pitfalls. But the other thing was I got really active in kicking the tires out there. So I actually started traveling out to the town like once a month, and I interviewed over the phone like property managers, real estate agents, contractors, lenders, mortgage brokers, insurance companies, like literally all the way down to like termite inspectors. So I really just got, and like that part of that comes from my regular job. Like I am in research. And so a lot of what I do is, tracking people down on the phone and asking them questions. So that kind of helped, that skill set kind of helped me. But I really just took this like funnel approach where, start with everyone that's you find on Google, and then just narrow it down. And then by the time I was out there, my second or third time, I was doing in-person interviews of like the last two candidates that had made it. And I just got comfortable. The other thing that made it easier for me was, if you put it into like just like a numbers perspective, and this is what we say can help first timers a lot too, is that I think a lot of people misunderstand how much money you actually need to start investing. So that 2-bedroom, 1-bathroom that I bought was $50,000, and I put down 25%, so that's $12,500, which it's not chump change, but it wasn't so much that even if I lost all of it, which with real estate that's pretty much never going to happen, but like even if I did lose all of it, it wouldn't like ruin my life. So, and the other thing is that we suggest strongly that people start with, we call them easy breezy, beautiful cover girl houses that don't need a ton of work. So this house needed it needed paint and some flooring and a couple of little things here and there. So maybe like $5,000-$6,000 of rehab. So all in, I'm in there for like, 17,000, but I was comfortable with the area, and that house rents for like $725 a month now, and I'm clearing, about $300 a month in cash flow. So I think, having a good knowledge of the numbers before you go in, and starting with a simple property that doesn't need a ton of work, and then also, just not trying to do too much on your first deal. I think it makes pulling that initial trigger a lot easier from an emotional perspective.
Yeah, the analogy I always hear, and it's a little strange for me because we don't really have baseball in the UK, is getting that base hit, right? You know, the
Yeah,
first three
exactly.
properties, you don't need to hit a home run on the first one. You just need to get a base hit, get yourself in the game. Don't lose everything, get that confidence, get that proof of concept, and just roll on to the next one. And that momentum is a real thing.
100%. Yeah, proof of concept is huge. And, once you get that, for me, it was always getting that first rent check. Once you get that first rent check from the property, then you're like, okay, this actually works. Like, I can do this again. This is not, and then when you do it and then when you get your second property, you're like, okay, the first one wasn't a fluke, and then you really start to get confident. So yeah, it's I think what you said is very true. It's a lot of people get scared on the first one, but I think having a great coach or mentor, or just someone that you have confident, like someone is a kind of like a confidant that you can bounce it off of and can be like, yeah, what you've and don't like. The thing I'll say is, like, don't just be like, do you think this is a good property? Like, prepare something for them. Like,
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like, show them, like, these are the numbers that I put together. I've done my homework. Can you just take a quick look at this? And, like, do you think it makes sense? And usually if the person, is mentoring you, they're going to take a look at it. They'll take 5 minutes to take a look at it.
Yeah, I think that's a great point, because so many people, you see it on Facebook all the time, right? They ask a question that's so easily Googleable. Just Google it. Like, what time does CVS close? Well, you've got this amazing thing on your phone. Like, you see it all the time, right? Just Google it. And, there's never any dumb questions. But to me, it's almost disrespectful if you're asking someone to help you. And the answer, you could probably find out that answer. Now, there's stuff that you can understand. Of course there is. But if you're asking questions and you put no effort in, it's literally, hey, how do I do this? Well, try and find out some more first. And people are going to respect you and going to want to help you a lot more from that. And that's interesting that you talk a lot about mentors as well. And I think that's, such a huge part of people's success, right? Most people that have success will have mentors. For people that are looking for a mentor, right? Do you have any suggestions on where to start? Because, it's not an easy way to go, right? It's hard to find a good mentor. There's mentors out there. You can pay for a coach or a mentor, and or you can find someone that's doing it already and that might be willing to help you. But it's not. I don't think it's necessarily that easy to find one, right? It is and it isn't, I guess.
Yeah, I think sometimes you get lucky. I think most people in the U.S. know at least one person in their family that has some connection to real estate, whether they're a broker or something. And, maybe they're not the right ones to mentor you in terms of investing, but they might know someone who, or like if you have a friend or a family member that's, a realtor, they may have one client who's an investor who may be willing to get coffee with you or, have a phone call with you quickly. And what I would say is, if you find someone that's the way I would start. If you find someone in that part of the network, do a little homework on them, look at, like, try to find if they have a LinkedIn or a website, learn a little bit more about them before you have the phone call. And, just common courtesy, like give them a compliment on their work and maybe have like one really specific question. And this falls back to what you were saying about using Google. Like, don't say like, hey, how do I invest in real estate? Like, hey, I was looking at this market and, my aunt told me that you were an investor. Would you mind if I asked you like a question about this, like, market metric that I'm looking at? Or like, how do you think about, population growth, something specific, so that it's not so vague that they have to do a ton of work to answer. It's something that they can kind of like answer in a sentence or two just to get the ball rolling. If you don't have someone in your network, there are a lot of like real estate investor networks in different cities and towns that you can look for. And then, I mean, like nowadays, you're on Instagram, like just get on Instagram, start, joining like people's Instagram lives, like asking questions in the lives. Just try to add value in some way. Like, everyone has a talent, and you can help someone in a certain way. Like, for me, it was making that pitch book for KR. That was kind of how I started with him. And for you, like, you're a super gregarious guy and obviously like very good with doing these interviews and stuff. And so you're giving people a platform to be interviewed. So it's just figure out what your niche is and then try to add some value that way.
Yeah, that's great advice. That's great advice. And to that point, you then ended up, KR was your mentor, but then you guys ended up partnering, right? How did that come about? And then what are you guys working on?
Yeah, so the way that we, like, KR, now I've kind of been indoctrinated to think the same way, is we try to, like, with anyone that we're coaching and like potentially partnering with, we always want to date them first and then marry them. So like coaching and mentoring is kind of like, you know, you're dating them. And then so he was mentoring me first, then he became more like specifically a coach. We became really good friends through that process. But then I became one of his debt investors. So I invested with him, through a debt instrument. And then we actually ended up partnering together, where I was kind of like the capital raiser. So I went out and found investors for us to invest in these apartment complexes that we invested in over the summer. So I personally have invested in 15 units out in Indiana, 13 single families and 1 duplex. And then in July and September of last year, we purchased 3 apartment complexes in the Philly area, a 9-unit, a 12-unit, and a 24-unit. And through this whole process, we realized, like, you know, I have a finance background, but I'm no rocket scientist. And I was able to kind of replicate what he did over the course of 10 years in, you know, like a 2-year span. So we realized, oh, this strategy that you have is not only replicable, it's portable, like in a totally different market. So we could teach other people how to do this. Because I also, you know, I'm the oldest of 4 siblings, and I always would help them with their homework, and I also do some tutoring stuff. So I knew that I was like pretty good at synthesizing information and like teaching other people how to do it. And I also do that obviously with the personal training. So I'm like, you know, we could take this stuff that you taught me and kind of pull it together. And that's what this KJ Consulting is. We've created a consulting platform whereby we teach people how to invest in real estate the way that we both do. So we had our first boot camp in December, and we have another one coming up in February of this year, February 20th, so in like 2 weeks. But yeah, so we teach people how to invest the way that we do, and you know, we just think it's like a really cool way to create wealth and get financial independence and have more free time. I think at the end of the day, like, what everyone wants is more life, and the way that you get more life is by having more access to your own time, where you're not trading your time for money.
So powerful. Time is the most valuable asset that we have, right? And it's just like, you don't want to be trading time for dollars, because also I've spoken about this a few times. Someone told me a while back, and it's like, it's one thing to trade your time for dollars, but when you have a family, I have a 17-month-old son. When I'm trading his time for dollars, man, when someone told me that, I was like, whoa, that was deep, like, to me, you know, because he has no choice, right? He doesn't make that decision. I get to make that decision. And if I'm trading his time for dollars, that's just shocking, you know, because it's one thing to waste your own time, but to waste your family and my wife too, you know. And so it's powerful. You said something there as well about, you know, and we talk about mentoring quite a bit, and we know, you know, I know you guys have consulting, but it's like whatever people want, right? But I think it's so powerful what you said. He took 10 years to do it, and you took 2 years to do it, right? The path that he's been on, because you were following. He had to work it out himself a lot of times. I'm sure he had probably mentors, but he figured it out and had to a long road. You were able to stand on his shoulders, right? See what he'd done, follow that path. And the great thing about real estate as well is that there's a path, right? Many different paths, but there's people that have blazed that trail. They've made that path for you. Just follow that path. You don't need to make your own path. It's, you know, I don't want to say it's simple, because it's not, but it's very repeatable, right? And I love that you said that you were just able to do what he did. How were you able to raise money? What was your strategy in terms of raising money for these deals?
Literally just get on the phone and tell people what we were up to. And, you know, when you start raising money, I think, you know, for any business, you gotta start with friends and family, right? Mm-hmm. And it's really interesting. You know, it's funny, like I'm not gonna say like you figure out who your real friends are, but like, because that's not really the case. But you know, some people, it's amazing. Like, some people will be like, yeah, definitely. Like, you don't have to really like explain to them that much more than what you're doing. But I think it comes down to trust. You want to definitely speak with people that at first that you have, you know, a strong relationship with, and just make sure that you can very simply and easily explain what you're trying to do. And you don't want to just like ask for money. You want to present it to them like, this is going to give you value too. So the way that I always spin it is like, look, you can invest in, you know, the stock market, or you can go to a bank. The stock market, you may get a better return you may get a better return in the short term, but there's a lot more risk involved in volatility. And we're backing your investment in us is backed by a real estate asset. So, you know, just kind of being able to explain what value you're providing to them. And if they, they put their money in a bank account, it's basically losing money to inflation these days because the rates are so low. But yeah, it's I think it's, you start with family and friends, and then you kind of elbow out from there. And then, as you start to get a reputation and you start to have happy investors, it's going to become a word of mouth thing pretty quickly. So we're still in the earlier stages of going out to investors, but it's going super well so far. And, another thing that KR always says, like, things done well are done soon enough. So for me, when I started, part of the reason why I grew so fast, and this is something that I would say is kind of like not a warning to new investors, but a lot of times it's tough to be patient. And I grew pretty quickly at first and probably made a few mistakes that I would have avoided had I just slowed down and realized, like, this is really a marathon, not a race. I love, like, Warren Buffett has this quote where it's like, you can't make a baby in 1 month by getting 9 women pregnant. And I think that's, like, very true in real estate. You just got to be, like, very methodical, pragmatic, make sure your numbers work, and just take your time.
What was there a challenge with that, from going from people knowing you as Joe, the finance guy who works at the bank, doing what you do for your W-2, to then being, hey, Joe's a real estate guy? Was there some education? Was there a challenge in changing people's opinion and thoughts of who you were?
I think the hardest opinion to change was, like, my internal opinion. So, like, yeah, I think, having the self-confidence to go out and say, like, because I believed in it, but, like, there's a different level of confidence between having yourself believe in something to convincing someone else and getting them to believe in it. And if you don't have, like, that really strong self-image of, this is what I'm going to be doing for a long time, and I'm going to be doing it well. So I think that was the hardest part for me, was just getting, I think every entrepreneur to an extent deals with, like, that imposter syndrome when they first start out. Like, even if it's going well, you're kind of just like, is this really happening? Like, am I really doing this? And then, but once I got some, deals under my belt, it became a lot easier, because I'm like, okay, now I have proof of concept. This is definitely working, and, it's repeatable. And a lot of it is that experience confidence that you get. But yeah, I think that. And then on the other side, to your point, yeah, it was weird at first. People will say, like funny stuff like, "Oh, are you a slumlord now?" Like, you always get that back. Where, for me, one of the bigger things was just, like, the town that I invest in is so random and no one's ever heard of it, and they're just like, "Why are you?" Because everyone, I think, wants to invest in the sexy markets. Mm-hmm. But I always say, like, don't fall in love with, like, the name or whatever, or the emotions of where you're investing. Like, fall in love with the numbers. And if the numbers make sense, that's the most important thing. So yeah, it was hard at first, but it's like anything else. Once you start getting those reps in, you kind of just get your own, like, swagger, and you understand how things work, and you figure out, like, your own. Everyone has their own way of selling stuff, and you got to, it's good to have mentors and coaches, but you really do have to find kind of your own voice when you're pitching people on stuff.
Yeah, but that's also another great point, is, like, I think for a lot of us, our thoughts of what other people think of us are probably worse than what they're actually thinking. Or, you know what I mean? That imposter syndrome, again, is that we create all these situations in our head that almost blocks us from doing stuff sometimes, when in reality, like you said, hey, you want to invest money? You don't ask that. You probably say, hey, I have a real estate deal. Are you interested? Kind of thing, right? Yeah, and they're like, yeah. And you're like, wait, I haven't finished my pitch yet. And like, no, we're cool. Yeah. It's interesting. Yeah. So what's next for you guys? Bigger and better deals? Or not better, just bigger deals? I'm sure you guys have invested in good deals already.
Oh, thank you. Appreciate that. Well, I think we want to continue to expand in terms of size. But right now we're still in the process of stabilizing those properties we bought last summer. So what we tend to do is buy distressed assets that are being mismanaged and that need work, right? So we go in, and maybe, one part of it, mismanaging an apartment complex can be like the rents are too low. Just maybe the prior owner was lazy and wasn't aggressive enough to increase the rent. So we'll increase the rents. We go in and cut operating expenses and all of those things together over time, and the value of the property while increasing, the cash flow and the NOI and the cash flow at the same time. So right now, we're in the process of stabilizing those properties that we purchased last year. But once we get those kind of, all set, and then they, they're just, well-oiled machines, then yeah, we'll probably, we're always looking at deals, let's put it that way. But, we definitely want to continue to grow.
Yeah.
The idea is to, work smarter, not harder. And then over time, retire and be able to travel and, like you said, spend time with family. Like those are the biggest things.
Yeah. I think that's great that you guys are doing, because I heard something on a bigger podcast the other day. I was talking about like a lot of entrepreneurs, they just want to on to the next one, right? On to the next one, accumulation phase, right? And that's great, right? And you want to be acquiring assets and building your portfolio and whatnot, but it's also important to clean house, right? To make sure that your house is nice and clean and that everything is as it should be, because there's going to be a time where you move on to the next one. You won't have time to have as much focus on it. So I think it's really smart of you guys to kind of make everything as it should be, make it optimal right now, right? Make everything performing as good as it can be, and then you can kind of move on. Because then once it's performing like that, you can kind of be a lot more hands off, right? It isn't as time intensive to manage something like that. So I think that's really smart. Yeah, very cool. Very cool one, man. This has got a cool story. Really, really interesting. Shared a lot of cool stuff, so a lot of the mindset stuff, and a lot of interesting stuff for sure. But as this show is called Wrestling with Real Estate, I like to incorporate some wrestling related real estate questions. So what would your wrestling name be if you picked one?
So this is kind of a cop out, but I had a boxing nickname. I was Joe Money. So I think I would be the money. In high school, people called me the Money Man. So I think that I would just be the Money Man. Yeah.
Well, was there anything behind that in school? Were you like an entrepreneur in school or something?
No, I wasn't. I think it just was like, it was an alliteration thing to start, but I also just think like people trusted me, or like someone who's like money is like trustworthy. They get stuff done. So.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah, I love that. That's a good one. That's a good one. Every wrestler has a special move. What is your special move in real estate?
I don't think that this would really get a lot of good press as a wrestler, but for me, it's definitely like my ability to like network. Mm-hmm. So I'm not like the networker, the networker or something like that. Like something where, because I can kind of, I've found that I can kind of sit in a room with someone, and just have like a normal conversation, like we've known each other for a long time. It seems like you definitely have that skill as well. So I think that for me, because like with real estate, what you'll find is, like I think the last 9 units I purchased in Indiana were all off-market deals that my network kind of brought to me. And I would never have had that happen had I not gone out there and built a relationship. So like networking is definitely.
But when you say that your network, who are these people in your network? Is it property managers?
Yeah, like property managers, real estate agents, and like not just having one real estate agent. Like we accept blessings from everywhere. So having multiple real estate agents working for you that have multiple, so you can have deal flow coming from all over. People on the ground. Just like I literally got. I think it's really just the whole network out there. Lenders, mortgage brokers, making sure that you have a nice, well-rounded team, and that you reach out to them on a regular basis and keep the conversation going. Not just call them when you need something, like reach out, see how business is going for them. Should be like a good give and take.
Yeah, that's great advice, because you never know where the next deal is going to come from. Exactly. What's been the biggest body slam you've taken? So
I would say there's probably like one of the, I actually think it's funny now. And at the time it was a big deal, but now it's not really. But so the biggest body slam was, this is actually on my first house. So there was this massive tree that was growing right next to the house that was suggested that I take down because it was kind of like messing up the sidewalk around the side of the house. And, I'm doing this all remotely, right? So I found a tree removal guy, and I was like, yeah, I need this tree removed. And it was like, it wasn't cheap. Like getting a tree removed is expensive. And I don't like taking down trees, because I like trees and it's like nature, whatever. And he's like, gets the job done. I think it was like $800. He sends me a picture. He took down the wrong tree.
Oh man.
So that was like a really big lesson, was just like, if you're going to do something remotely, like make sure that there's pictures of like circle the thing you want done, make sure it's incredibly clear, make sure the communication is locked tight. So that would say like, that's probably like the biggest body slam, just because it was like, right, killed a tree, and I lost all that money. So.
Oh man, I can completely relate. I bought a house here for me and my wife to live in, and when we went to see it, the agent, we went up back, and there was a big tree, and the roots had caused the wall to crack a little bit. So she points at the tree, goes, "Hey, don't worry, the bank, it was a foreclosure. The bank are getting rid of that. No worries." Didn't think anything of it, right? Still early on in my career at this point. She told me that, didn't think anything of it. So get in the contract, the day before closing, do the final walkthrough like most people do. We walk out back, open the double doors. What is still there in front of me but the tree? I'm like,
oh no.
Around the corner, there was a beautiful pineapple palm tree, palm tree, like a beautiful one. They took that out.
Oh.
So those things are worth about 5-10 grand. I don't know. So and it wasn't touching any wall or nothing whatsoever. So I had to fight with I didn't win anything. I just lost the tree. And luckily
I think that this is like a conspiracy, and I have nothing against tree removal guys, but sometimes there's this, because that tree I bet was a lot smaller than the one. That's what happened. The tree I want to remove was huge, and the one they took out was small.
Yeah, so man, I can completely relate to that. It's not fun, but funny at the same time, right? You got to laugh at things like that. So was there a moment that you were standing on the top rope getting ready to jump, but you were too scared? What was it? How did you overcome it?
So absolutely. For me, it was definitely when I went from having, like, the largest deal I'd ever done was a duplex to suddenly buying a 9-unit and a 12-unit at the same time. And I think the reason why I was like, I like to think of this acronym of fear is false expectations appearing real. And I had a lot of fear around multifamily just because I'd always heard, like, multifamily is so hard. There's like bigger building, bigger problems, like all this stuff. And so it was like subconsciously in the back of my head, and I just had this kind of mental block around it. But the way that you get past anything that you're afraid of is through understanding. So I just did a lot of homework. I had great coaching from KR, and we got that deal done, even though I was very anxious the whole time. And then once you do it the first time, like we've been talking about, like, it becomes easier. So definitely was worried about that one going into it, but you just gotta, like, mentally prepare yourself through educating yourself. That's and through good coaching. And I think that's the way you get over any big fear.
Yeah, it's awesome advice. Well, Joe, thanks for being here today, man. I really enjoyed our conversation. Could have gone for way longer easily. There's so much more stuff I would have loved to talk to you about. Maybe in the future at some point we can get you back, and you'll be at 1,000 units at that point. We can talk all about how you did. But before we go, tell more about you guys' consulting program, and then everything else that you have to plug as well.
That would be great. Yeah. So we're doing boot camps. I'm not sure if we may have already done the boot camp when this airs, but we'll be doing more throughout the year. So you guys can find us on Instagram at KJ Consulting. So it's KAYJAYCONSULTING on Instagram. And then our website is kjconsulting, same spelling, .net, kjconsulting.net. And so our boot camp it can be for first-time investors, people with absolutely no real estate experience, or some people that may have a couple of properties under their belt, but they want to learn more. And the way that it's set up is that it's a 1-day boot camp. It's set up in 2 parts. The first part is kind of qualitative. So it's like the mindset of a real estate investor. What is real estate as an asset compared to other assets? What are the benefits of investing in real estate? Key terms and key team members. And then in the second half, we go into more of a quantitative thing where we're going to show you, like, what are the key metrics we look at to pick a market. And, like, we have a spreadsheet that we're going to give to anyone that does the course. And then we also go into analyzing a specific property itself. So we'll go through the whole P&L, how to find the rent, how to find the different operating expenses, and then show you the specific hurdles that we look at as far as returns are concerned, whether or not we would pull the trigger on that property. And the cool thing about it is that if you take the course with us, we give you access to our full team out in Indiana and our full team in the Philly area to help you out if you want to just, like we said, use coaching to get your own. You don't have to even pick the market. You can just use one of the markets that we've already vetted. And then we're going to check in on you. Like KR says, not a one-night stand. We're going to check in on you guys once a month after that. And we're going to do a check-in call, make sure that you're progressing, because we really want everyone to do well. We want our students to to be successful. So yeah, that's what we got right now. And, we're looking to grow our product portfolio from that side. But if you follow us on Instagram, we're always, we're defining terms, we're explaining different things that we've invested in. So it's a good place to get knowledge, and you should follow, if you don't already follow Barry, he has some great interviews up there too. So follow him.
Thanks, man. Thanks, man. I'll put the links in the description and the show notes below. Yeah.
It's
so
great.
Yeah, thank you, man. If anyone wanted to provide some value to you and do anything for you, what do you need? What can people help you with?
Just right now, we're just looking to get more eyeballs on the Instagram and spread the word of what we're doing. So yeah, a follow, or some comments on our posts. And if you already follow us, share your post with a friend. Share a post that you like with a friend, and just try to spread the word. Because look, this is another thing that I like to say is, like, when you're dealing with infinite resources, and I really do believe that there's an infinite amount of wealth out there, there's no such thing as taking more than your fair share. So I really try to come at things from an abundance mindset, and so there's enough for everybody to go around. So just spread the word. We can all win together. That's really the way I'm thinking about real estate.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, awesome, man. Thank you for making the time. This has been a lot of fun. Take it easy, bro.
Yeah, man. Have a great day. Thank you, dude.